Let's begin by telling you that organized labor, comprising the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, have submitted a fresh proposal to the federal government of Nigeria, demanding 615,000 naira as a new minimum wage for workers in the country. According to a source who was a member of one of the subcommittees set up by the government to work on getting a new minimum wage for the country, the 615,000 naira monthly was reached after consultations by the NLC and TUC. President Bola Tinubu, through Vice President Kashim Shettima, had on January 30th set up a 37-member panel at the Council Chamber of the State House in Abuja, with its members cutting across federal and state government, the private sector, and organized labor. The panel was tasked with recommending a new national minimum wage. And to unpack these, I'm joined by business and social policy analyst Kenneth, Ikenwa. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
Now, let me start by asking you what you make of this 615,000 naira being proposed by the organized labor to the federal government.
Well, I'll start by saying it's a wonderful proposition, but a proposition being wonderful doesn't translate to it being realistic. It's very important that the Nigerian Labour Congress, which I vehemently support, should look at the economic realities on ground and play their own role in helping to redirect the ship, the alien economic ship of Nigeria, into the right direction with proper perspectives. So it started with 200,000. At the point it got to 1 million naira, and now it's back to 615,000. It is not economically pragmatic, in as much as the Nigerian Labour Congress prides itself as a catalyst for macroeconomic populism. I do not think that this is realistic. We have looked at this some time ago, and we have tried to set a tune or a target or a range, given the almost 200% increment in prices of goods and services and other things and amenities that Nigerians do enjoy, irrespective of the region. We would have thought, and I have advised, that at least the new minimum wage should range between 90,000 and 150,000. Because you have to put in a lot of factors, and the fact that the Nigerian economy is highly segregated across different sectors and different classes. We have to look at this and ensure that we are not, frustrating the government that is already frustrated and also frustrating Nigerians, and make sure that whatever is being asked for is realistic and we are very pragmatic.
Well, but when you say recommendations given for the new minimum wage should be between 90 to 100,000, I mean, some persons will say that, does not even meet the purchasing power with the present reality of Nigeria. Talk about the, escalating prices of goods and services, inflation jumping now to about 32.2%. So people will say, some persons will say that's not even worth it when you look at the purchasing power of the average Nigerian.
Well, the purchasing power parity is even going to go worse, because as of today, this morning, the National Bureau of Statistics has released a figure that says inflation has jumped from about 29% to now 33.2%. So I do not know if we should expect things to get better, but we need to really face the challenges on ground. We need to divide the country into different stratas and understand that what somebody that works at a level of maybe 10 or maybe 7 in the civil service may not necessarily be the requirements of somebody that is on a level 17 or a level 18. But we also need to put together, the entire working class of Nigeria and ensure that whatever is being asked for is something that can be met with in other sectors outside the civil service, at the state level, at the federal level, and the local governments. Now, you need to understand, and we also need to understand as Nigerians, that the largest employment of labor in Nigeria is actually the informal sector and the small and medium scale enterprises. So if you're asking for an astronomical 400 or 500, 600% increment in the minimum wage, I think that will be belaboring the gains that we're expected to be making with subsidy removal, and that will be putting much more on the employers of labor. I honestly believe that 615,000 is not realistic. I think, and I stand by what I've said last month on this platform and on this channel, that between 90,000 and 120, 150,000 seems to be more realistic. And how did I arrive at that figure? When you look at the staple food that Nigerians actually do eat, which is bread, the average price of a loaf of bread now is 1,500. I was in Sangwater over the weekend, and I heard that the average loaf the average price of a loaf of bread in Sangwater is 1,700. Now, for a family of a husband and wife, or husband and wives and 4 children, given our polygamous culture, for a family of 6, they would need about 2 loaves times 6 times 30 days, that's 60,000. And then you look at other living expenses. So I think that bringing it to about 90,000 or about 200,000 increments in what actually did exist before will be very realistic, considering the fact that the price of PMS has gone up by about 200%. It would just be a complete correlation, a perfect correlation to increase the minimum wage by at least 200% or between 150 and 200% going forward.
Yeah, just to chip in there, Kenneth, I know you talked about the impact of these, affecting employers of labor. You also mentioned these would erode the gains made by the removal of subsidy. But then what other impact will this have on Nigeria as a whole, if implemented?
Well, the increment in the minimum wage in Nigeria is usually not income elastic. And what does that mean? It means that when there is this news about the increment of the salaries of workers, people in the market forget that this actually affects those in the federal service, those in the federal civil service, in the state, and hopefully in the local government civil service structure. And the private sector is expected to join in, which sometimes out of the lack of proper structure do not actually follow suit with whatever the government recommends. Now, what that will mean is that there will be more money coming into the Nigerian economy, and more money chasing fewer goods will translate to inflation. And this inflation can come in various forms. It could be hyper, it could be shrink inflation, it could be other forms of inflation that will reduce the quality of life of the Nigerian people. So we need to be well advised. The government is well advised with this intervention, and I expect much more from the Nigerian Labour Congress to be properly and better and perfectly advised on how to go about this. Asking for too much at this point in time will have terrible negative external economic effects and terrible multiplier effects on the Nigerian economy. So I think asking for what has just been adjusted by the removal of subsidy, which has brought untold hardship upon Nigerians, should be commensurate if we're asking for a proper wage increase.
Well, I wish we had more time to talk about this, but thank you so much for your insight on the news. Kenneth Ikenwa, business and social policy analyst. Thank you once again.
Always my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.